Well, greetings, weekend visitors. Welcome back to the paper prison. So glad you decided to visit me this week. It's getting a little lonely here, as one can find and lock up. Anyway, 'tis I, your host, the comics prisoner, sentenced for crimes against comics illustration to be forever confined in beautiful pieces of original comic art, to review and analyze and look over it and learn from my mistakes, and to celebrate the art and the artists who create it. So, where are we today? So glad you asked. We are returning back to our Heck of an Inker series, and I'm not going to say I've saved the best for last, I've just saved my favorite for last. And as you know, that's a very personal and subjective thing, so please don't take it personally and think I'm insulting anyone. So today I find myself confined in the page from Avengers number 29 from the mid-60s, don't know exactly the page number, and it's inked by one of my faves, Mr. Frank Giacoia. Mr. Giacoia was born in 1924 and died in 1988, far too soon as far as I'm concerned. It's a big loss because I really enjoyed his work. Now to start off, I know as you're looking at this page, this isn't like the most exciting, not the most flashy one. There's a lot of pages from this issue and others that I'd really love to share and go over with you. Unfortunately, the conceit of my little show here is that I am confined to only one page of comic art at a time. However, I have come up with some ideas to visit these pages, different pages, in another series, so then you can applaud my cleverness when we return to these. So as I said, not a very flashy page. It's basically a lot of talking heads, a lot of exposition, which is needed in a comic book. Not every page just can't be a splash page, okay? And just to recap, this is the Heck of an Inker series as we go over really a good time in Avengers history, and with artist penciler Don Heck and several different inkers that really worked well with him in my opinion, and plussed his work. Again, I don't want to make it sound like he needed fixing. It's just, as I keep saying, comic art is not just art, it's alchemy. It's not about the talents, it's about the combinations of talents. And just as much as I like what Wally Wood did and what John Romita did, I really love what Giacoia did here. Before we do our deep dive into this page, you might say, okay, so why do I like Giacoia so much? Aside from his clearly professional line control of the tools and the medium, it's his expression. And and I'll be upfront with you. I think his expression reminds me a lot of Dick Giordano, which is like probably my greatest artistic influence hero. Especially there was later on, like after the beginning of the 70s, I saw him inking a lot of Spider-Man over Gil Kane, which was a wonderful combination. But when I looked at it, I thought, wow, is this Dick Giordano inking Gil Kane? No, it was Frank Giacoia. Very interesting look, and that's damning with faint praise. It was a great looking book. But he was good in the 60s, he was good in the 70s, he was good now on the pages we're talking about. So just as I've talked about the artists like Giacoia and Giordano who've influenced me, let's look again at, through influences, how these inkers are all kind of similar or have connections. As I've said before, since these men are artists of a certain age, it's very possible they were very much influenced by Milton Caniff's Steve Canyon. So let's come at this page from that standpoint. Let's look at the top two, the panels in the top tier. Now, it's widely known that John Romita has said that he is influenced by Milton Caniff. But I gotta tell you, when I look at his work, I don't see it unless I look hard. and then I'm seeing it being filtered through the John Romita machine. Kind of the same thing here with Giacoia. I'm looking at, and the reason I picked this page, as again, I said it doesn't have a lot of flashiness, but it's got some very interesting things going on. So let's look at it. Okay, top two panels. Panel left. Look at the drapery in Hank Pym's coat here. The wet, painterly blacks that Giacoia is slapping in here that wonderfully draws this three-dimensional coat. And I just see so much of Caniff in this. And it's very important to remember that you can't do a comic book totally of people in skin-tight outfits, although I want to talk about what that means for the art world in general. To be a comic artist, you have to be able to draw everything. That means anatomy, faces, clothing, men's clothing, women's clothing, cars, furniture, hallucinogenic acid trips. That's why people don't really appreciate artists or comic book artists like they should, because they don't understand you got to be able to draw everything. You can't just be a specialist like a landscape artist or a pet artist or nudes or whatever. Okay, now continuing with Giacoia's technique on here, let's look at Hank's hair, which is just lovingly rendered and just tousled and thick and youthful and attractive. And then in the back of his head there's those Milton Caniff's blacks to make that illusion of, okay, there's a light on the right side, so there's shadow on the left side, and it gives the illusion of solidity of 3D. It's a trick that all cartoonists use, but it's a trick that works. It's totally legit. Okay, so if we look over, before we go to the right, we're going to go down one, middle panel. We have Wanda's hair similarly tousled, and look at Cap and Hank standing next to her. Again, the Milton Caniff shadows. We actually have Cap's shadow falling across on Hank's body, and then Hank's far right, the folds go into a solid black, reinforcing the illusion that there's a light source, making they have to be real, they have to be 3D, they're casting shadows. Again, a technique, but when done well, is always beautiful. Now, let's look down, while we're there, look at Wanda's beautiful tousled hair. Giacoia is just as much adept with the materials and the tools of brush and ink as Romita is, and does just as well, and would, just as beautiful technique of rendering hair as any of them. Although I got to tell you, that face mask on Wanda, I think, is wrong. I think that isn't how, if you look down, it's called a wimple. And if you look down on the lower panel and even the upper panel, you see it doesn't work that way. I think either Heck went off script or Giacoia, was like moving so fast, he just did it the way he wanted to look. She too has a thicker line on the back of her head to reinforce all the light source system that's being made. Cap's body is casting a shadow on Hank's body. Hank's folds, as it turns away from the light, starts getting thicker into black, and the back of Wanda's head is thicker than the front, so we see how the light works. And if we go down to the final panel, again, not really that flashy, but look at the control of line with those glowing lines around Hank. It's not easy. I bet he did it with a brush, which isn't easy. And then also look at those lines on the inside of Wanda's costume, suggesting light source. Lights, coming, the light that gets inside of her, on the inside of her cape is illuminated, but as it turns away from the light, the rendering lines come up to give that feeling. That's called transposition, where light goes from one saturation down to the other. So Clearly I am obsessing over these lines and technique much more than the average reader or viewer will. Now let's go back up to the top right panel, and this is something I've discussed in the other two installments of the Heck of an Inker series, and that's how these inkers interpreted Don Heck's faces. This is a case where you just can't always slavishly follow the penciler's line, and never more so than the faces, and because of this, and I've said it before, we are a very self-absorbed species. We, no matter what's in a comic panel, we go straight to looking at the faces or the heads, the eyes. We're looking for ourselves in the figures, in the subjects. Now, Don Heck was a perfect technician, a perfect draftsman. His heads were technically drawn perfectly. But as I said before, some of his rendering techniques can come off as a little caustic, a little harsh, a little coarse, a little off-putting. And it doesn't matter that everything else in the drawing is perfectly fine with the viewer. We're looking at the face. And if the face puts you off, it can really just shoot you in the foot. I have a friend whose name I'll keep to myself, who is a wonderful cartoonist. He's just great. He's better than I am, for sure. I can't really touch him. But like another fine artist, when he looks, what he thinks the world should look like is not in agreement with the wide mainstream. So the wide mainstream, they don't care that the face is drawn perfectly. They just care that the face is unattractive. And here we go with Frank Giacoia on Don Heck. In that top right panel, we're looking at Don Heck's, we're looking at the face Don Heck drew. And I know that Heck often draws these cheekbones, and I know how he draws those cheekbones. And Giacoia has elected not to render it in the same way Heck drew it, I'm sure. Yes, we're going into speculation and opinion, but having seen a lot of Heck work, I'm pretty certain this is the case. He has not just traced it, just inked it. He has interpreted, he's plussed it. And he's done it in his own way with some wonderful drop shadows, again, very Kniffy. And I think it's beautiful. And again, this is a partnership, a collaboration. I don't think one's stepping on the other. Remember, comics is a commercial art business, commercial art industry that employs fine artists, and that can be a bit chaotic. So before I go on, I just want to make it clear. I know it sounds like when I'm talking about these inkers helping, improving or doing a great job over Don Heck's work, it sounds like I'm knocking him, like there's something that he needs help, that he needed fixing, that he got this job because they were giving him a favor. Believe me, Stan didn't do that. He did not give people jobs because he liked them. He gave them to because he thought they were good. And I'm sure it also probably sounds like since he needed these great inkers, then he himself probably couldn't ink it himself, probably wasn't a good inker himself. Oh, nothing could be further from the truth. Again, it's not the talents, it's the mixture of talents. And I have seen, I could specifically mention a ink job Heck did over Sal Buscema. It was over Marvel 2-in-1. It was the Thing and Tigra team up, and they made a wonderful team. I loved his inks over Buscema in that job. Also, I saw him, he inked several issues over Bob Brown, and I thought, whoa, this is very interesting. I like how this looks together. Again, please do not get the message that I'm saying that Heck was substandard or needed fixing. Of course, this is all subjective opinions, and so your opinion of Heck in many ways is just as good as mine. So, well, here we are as visiting hours close. I want to thank you again for being here, and if you want to read more of the Frank Giacoia team, as I've said, go to your local comic shop. They will help you find collections or back issues or any reprints or originals, you know, that'll just turn you on. This is great stuff. Also, I always direct you toward the Marvel app for a low monthly fee. You can get access to their entire library. It's a great deal. But I also always direct you toward the Essentials volumes because I love seeing this stuff in black and white. That said, boy, I wish they would do one of those artist editions. You know, those artifact or artist editions where they reprint the entire original art as best they can. It's almost like having... See, those are great stuff. And I think IDW does those, and who else? There's someone else. I cannot remember. I feel bad about that. But I would love for them to be a artist's edition of the Heck work with Giordano. Giacoia, Wood, and Romita. And I'd also like to say, if you're going to go for the Essentials, you'll get some good examples of the Wood and Romita work in the first Avengers Essential. The Giacoia work comes in the second collection, Essentials number 2. So just letting you know that. Please seek them out. So, looks like visiting hours is about to close. Well, it's been wonderful. But until next time, my friends, remember, 4 walls do not a prison make. But comics can make a pretty good prison. See ya. Oh, just one more thing. I've been reminded. I should ask you that if you like these little talks with me, please feel free to subscribe and hit the like button. And I really appreciate that. It will help the channel. And hopefully I'll get to know who's here and who's watching. All right, see you now. Bye.